Health Crisis Town Hall. This presentation is brought to you by the Theta Chi chapter of Chi Eta Phi Nursing Sorority Incorporated and Barnes Health Affiliates LLC. My name is Louise Galloway, and I am the chair of the Health and Social Policy Committee of Theta Chi chapter. Next slide, please. To give you a brief overview of our organization, Chi Eta Phi is a national Black nursing sorority whose motto is service for humanity. Theta Chi chapter is located in Queens, New York, and was chartered in 1965. Next slide, please. I would like to give special thanks to the committee for organizing this town hall. Co-chair Patricia Armand, Erica Ambrose, Julia Blair, Keisha Jones, Nicole Francis, Gloria Quales, Stella Gray. I would now like to introduce the president of our chapter, Dr. Kamila Barnes.
Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome everyone who's here today, taking the time out to be a part of this discussion for this very important topic. Again, I'm Dr. Kamila Barnes. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I'm a professor, and I'm also a business owner of Barnes Health Affiliates, LLC. I'm also the president of Theta Chi Chapter Incorporated. So today what we're focusing on is Black women health disparities when it comes to maternity. Black women's health matters, Black women's lives matters. It's to no surprise that these health disparities exist in our nation. The United States has the highest healthcare spending in the world. 20% of our GDP goes to healthcare costs, despite our poor outcomes, lower life expectancy than in comparison to other countries, and poor health outcomes in general, especially when it comes to disparities, racial ethnic disparities. So it's important to understand that these health disparities did not just come out of thin air. The reason why we are sitting here today is because our long United States history of medical apartheid. So please understand that this is not what we are taught when we are in grade school and learning about American history. This is information that you have to discover on your own, unfortunately, or unfortunately when something bad happens to you or tragic happens to you, then you're sitting at the table and realizing that other people are experiencing the same thing. So let's go back and take a trip down history lane, which Louise Galloway will give you more history information about how Black women have been treated. But health disparities has existed since the birth of this nation. Before hospital care was a standard of maternity care, we had Black midwives who came into our communities to deliver our children at home. We had Black midwives who cared for us at a time when we were barred from hospitals, when we were barred from OBGYN clinics and we had nowhere to go. But as the profession of Black midwives grew and as a success rate, because we have had Black midwives who have had 0 maternal deaths, who have been very successful, it became a competition in the United States between the medical community and Black midwives. And still to this day, their scope of practice is being hindered and being denied and to be able to practice at their full scope. But when we look at, when we compare our infant mortality rates and maternal mortality rates, we are leading in the world. And when we look at articles in comparison to other countries such as Denmark, they have an interdisciplinary approach to maternity. That means that physicians, midwives, doulas, and other support services all are a part of the team and everybody's expertise is valued. And that's what we need to move forward. We need interdisciplinary work if we really want to tackle these issues. But let's call a spade a spade. Historically, medical apartheid has existed on the perils of white supremacy. And that has led to the mistreatment of Blacks in general, but specifically on this topic to Black women. There are many research articles about how Black women have been treated during labor and delivery, been ignored, the existence of implicit bias. So structural racism is a part of our history. And in order for us to fix this problem, we need to first acknowledge the problem that exists, and we need to address it and take action. So I hope that you all today learn something about this topic, but also you go back to your organization, to your school, to your homes, you spread information and take action on what's going on today. So what you'll learn also about is all of the health disparities that exist in our history, especially when it comes to things like hysterectomies. We saw recently with ICE detainees who were having there's procedures performed on them for hysterectomies. That's been a long-standing issue in the Black women community, extending back to the early 1900s. So there's this negative attitude of Black women and their reproductive health. There's also no reproductive justice. So we need to work on accountability, because the reality is that this problem falls on our shoulders as healthcare providers. We need to stop the blaming game of blaming victims and saying that Black women are overweight, obese, or have other health issues, and that we deserve to die. Because as you will see throughout the program, is that most of these deaths were preventable, and many of the women who have passed away had no significant medical history. They were simply ignored. So I really want to also emphasize that moving forward, it's important that we start to have in healthcare more of an interdisciplinary approach, including midwives and their expertise, and a resurgence of midwives and a respect for their profession as part of the team. In addition to that, also, it's important for us as a Black community to really speak to these issues and follow through on our actions. One thing that President Trump has done really well is polarize us, and sometimes it's perceived as negative, but it's something that the Black community really needed. We needed a wake-up call, and we needed that fire so that we could protest and have our voices known. We get comfortable, and then we think that we live in a false sense of security and think that everything is going well, and it's really not. So I would say this today: don't settle. Well, if you get settlement money, we take the settlement money, but because we still haven't had reparations in our community. But go beyond that. We need new legislation for healthcare reform, so that these issues can be the forefront and the priority when it comes to political agenda. Also, it's important for everybody to get involved, and especially in the healthcare community, this topic should be part of grand rounds, should be part of continuing education, and also evaluation of not only women that have passed away, but also near-miss incidents. So quality reviews of women who have suffered complications, and that use that as almost like a training tool, simulation, so that the next person that comes in with a similar circumstance, their burden can be alleviated and that they could survive childbirth. So I'm going to turn it back over to Louise Galloway. Just before I do that, some housekeeping information. Everybody will be on mute until the discussion and Q&A period at the end. If you have any questions for any of our panel speakers, please enter them into the chat and I will receive them. There are some upcoming events that I will post in the chat. I'm also the second vice president on the Greater New York City Black Nurses Association board. We have our inaugural march in New York City on October 25th at 10 a.m. Wear pink or purple in solidarity about Black women's health and protest against health disparities. Also, one of our speakers, Shamony Gibson, will be speaking about her Mother of Wit conference, which will be on October 24th. So that link will go into the chat as well. I also want to forewarn everyone that during this program, you're going to feel a mix of emotions, sadness, anxiety, or feeling uncomfortable. Please understand that, again, the goal of this event is to bring about awareness and also establish actionable items to move forward and make things better for Black women. Thank you.
Thank you. Black maternal health in the US has a long history of medical neglect and abuses towards Black women. James Marion Sims is credited as the father of modern gynecology by developing pioneering tools and surgical techniques related to women's reproductive health. What is not commonly known is his research and surgeries were performed on enslaved Black women without any anesthesia. Operated on at least enslaved women in this fashion. One enslaved woman endured at least 30 painful surgeries. He had a misguided belief that Black people didn't experience pain like white people do. And according to a recent study conducted at the University of Virginia, it's a notion that persists to this day. Next slide, please. Now for some statistics. According to a review presented at the American Diabetes Association, American women die in childbirth at a higher rate than any other developed country. Non-Hispanic Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to have a maternal death than white women in the United States. Pregnancy-related mortality can be defined as death of the mother during pregnancy, delivery, or within 1 year postpartum. And pregnancy-related mortality in the US occurs at an average rate of 17.2 deaths per 100,000 live births. For non-Hispanic Black women, the number jumps to 43.5 deaths per 100,000 live births. 2/3 of these deaths are considered to be preventable. Next slide, please. Now, in New York City, according to the New York City Department of Health, Black mothers are 12 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. The leading causes of death include cardiovascular conditions, cardiomyopathy, preeclampsia and eclampsia, which are hypertensive disorders, and postpartum hemorrhage. Next slide, please. To address the Black maternal health crisis in America, several Black congressional leaders formed the Black Maternal Health Caucus. And along with Senator Kamila Harris, they have introduced the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act of 2020. It consists of 9 individual bills designed to fill gaps in existing legislation to comprehensively address every dimension of the Black maternal health crisis in America. The legislation will invest in social determinants of health, provide funding to community-based organizations, diversify the perinatal workforce, invest in VA maternity care coordination, support for incarcerated women, invest in maternal mental health care and substance abuse disorder treatments, provide continuity of health insurance coverage from pregnancy and up to 1 year postpartum, and to improve data collection processes and quality measures. Next slide, please. Today, we feature the stories of Black men whose queens have died either during childbirth or the postpartum period due to complications, as well as a discussion about taking action to address Black maternal mortalities and health disparities. Our first speaker is Charles Johnson, who is the founder of For Kira, For Moms. He has suffered an unimaginable tragedy that strikes too many families and has made it his life's mission to save others from the same fate. In April 2016, Charles's healthy and full of life wife, Kira, gave birth to their second beautiful child. But Kira immediately began struggling in ways that the hospital staff could not explain, even as Charles watched and implored the staff that something was horribly wrong. Kira died within hours. Charles was understandably overcome by grief, grief that turned into outrage. He channeled his pain and his passion into founding a nonprofit for Kira for Moms that is dedicated to changing systems to better prevent birth-related deaths. For Kira for Moms advocates for improved maternal health policies and regulations, educates the public about the impact of maternal mortality in communities, provides peer support to victims, families, and friends, and promotes discussion of maternal mortality as a human rights issue. Charles has shared his story and advocated for change through countless live events and media appearances all over the country, including at the March for Moms rally in Washington, D.C. last year. Last September, he testified before the U.S. House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Health about the need to pass the Preventing Maternal Deaths Act of 2017, which was indeed passed by Congress and signed into law. When he is not advocating to improve maternal health practices, Charles is busy raising his two sons, Charles V. and Langston. We welcome Charles Johnson.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much. It truly is an honor to be here in this place, in this space with you all this wonderful afternoon. I want to thank Dr. Barnes. I want to thank you, Ms. Galloway, and all of the wonderful, wonderful members of this organization. I want to send a special shout out to one of my many surrogate mothers and angels, Shamony Gibson, and Omari for the invite. My brother Bruce, you know, I love you. But listen, let's jump right into this because I want to get through who I am and why I'm here so that I can leave space for the other brilliant brothers who are part of this conversation, and we can have a wonderful conversation. And I think that all of our hopes is not for this to be a lecture, but to be a conversation amongst community. So I'm Charles Johnson. I am the exceptionally proud father of two amazing boys, Charles, who is 6 years old, just turned 6 last Friday, and Langston, who is 4 years old, going on 44. And so if you see a big head pop up on the screen, that's probably one of them. They might come in and make a special appearance. They tend to do that from time to time, but that's just the reality of life in this era. So I was fortunate enough to meet a woman that absolutely changed my life, right? So we talk about Kira, and that's one of the things that you're going to hear. One of the parallels that you're going to hear from myself, from Bruce and Omari, is that the women that we have lost truly were earth angels. And so Kira, we're talking about a woman who spoke 5 languages fluently, who raced cars, who had her pilot's license. And I joke all the time, and I say that, yo, she was really way out of my league. But it's fortunate enough to make Kira Dixon, Kira Johnson. We welcomed our first son in 2014. And we'd always talked about having these back-to-back boys. And so we were so just over the moon. We found out we were welcoming our second son, Langston, in April of 2016. So the painful irony of what I'm going to share with you all this afternoon is that as a father, as a husband, you always want the best for your wife. You want the best for your children. And so we made the decision. We'd recently relocated from Atlanta to Los Angeles, California. So we made the decision to deliver at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center because it was our understanding that Cedars-Sinai was supposed to be this shining example of everything that's right in labor and delivery, right? It's supposed to be, it's the place where all the celebrities have their baby. It's supposed to be this wonderful research hospital. And so on April 12th of 2016, which we expected to be the happiest day of our lives, we walked into Cedars-Sinai Hospital and ended up walking straight into a nightmare. And so I'm going to go through what happened this afternoon briefly in the interest of time. But so we went in for what was supposed to be a scheduled C-section at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Langston was born perfectly healthy, 10 fingers, 10 toes, kicking, you know, super handsome, looking just like his daddy. And so shortly after the delivery, they take us back to recovery. And as I'm sitting there just soaking all this up, all this pride of becoming a father for the second time, as I look down and begin to see blood in the catheter coming from Kira's bedside. I bring it to the attention of the doctors and the nurses at Cedars. They come and they assess Kira. They do a couple of things. They order blood work. They examine her physically. They do an ultrasound, but importantly, they call for a CT scan to be performed stat. And by stat, what does that mean to y'all, right? It means immediately, right now. So I'm thinking, all right, look, my wife is healthy, my baby is healthy, and we're at Cedars-Sinai. Everything's gonna be okay. It's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock comes, no CT scan. 6 o'clock comes, still haven't taken her. Now at 6:44, the medical records indicate that they classified Kira as a surgical emergency. But 7 o'clock comes, they still haven't taken her back for surgery, and they still haven't taken her for the CT scan. 8 o'clock comes, no CT scan. 9 o'clock. And I won't belabor the point, but it wasn't until after midnight, after allowing Kira to suffer for almost 10 hours, after begging and pleading the staff at Cedars-Sinai for help for almost 10 hours, after allowing my wife to suffer needlessly for almost 10 hours, that they finally took Kira back for surgery, right? And when they took her back and they opened her up, there were 3 liters of blood in her abdomen for where she'd been able to allow it to bleed internally for all those hours. And so just taking a moment, when we walked into that hospital on April 12th of 2016, the simple thought that Kira would not walk out to raise her sons, it never crossed my mind, right? And so as you can understand, my world was turned upside down. I really honestly thought that what happened to Kira was an anomaly. This doesn't happen today, and to women that have access to care, that do everything right, it doesn't happen. And I was completely shocked when I found out that not only is this happening, but that you all did such a wonderful job of laying out this crisis. We lead the world in women dying in childbirth. We have 50,000 women on an annual basis that are experiencing near-miss events, and then our African-American women are dying 5 times as often as their Caucasian counterparts. So not only was I shocked to hear this, I was floored that nobody was talking about it, right? How is this America's dirty little secret? How is this happening to women, and how is this happening to Black women at this rate, and nobody's talking about it? So I made the decision after a lot of prayer and really talked to my family. I just really felt like I had to do something about it. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know how I could help, but I felt like I owed it to Kira. I felt like I owed it to my sons to try and do something, to try and stand up for women, to try and bring attention to this issue. And so I shared Kira's story publicly the Friday before Mother's Day in 2017, really honestly thinking that, I would share the story and then I might go back to being a soccer dad in obscurity. And I had no idea what Kira and God had in store for my life, and that this really, here's the thing, is that sometimes if you're lucky, you get to choose your purpose in life, and your purpose lines up with all your dreams and everything that you have chosen for your life. But sometimes your purpose is born out of your nightmare, right? And so for me, this is what I have dedicated my life to doing, although there's nothing I can do to bring Kira back. I am committed my life to doing everything I can, whenever I can, to make sure we do everything we can to send other mothers home with their precious babies. So, I am an open book. So when we get to the Q&A portion, there's no question that's off limits. I have to say briefly that I'm tremendously grateful for both Bruce and Omari and who they are and what they represent as men and as fathers. And I am so, I don't even know the word to say. I hate that we have a bond under these circumstances, but, for a long time, there was a long time where I was really out here you know, doing this work in solitude, and there really weren't other men that were stepping up. But the way that they have done this, the way that they have poured in this, the way that not only they do that, but they stand in the gap as fathers in the absence of their queen is so inspirational. And I'm just grateful for them. And I just see what's happening in their lives, and particularly with Bruce, in the way that he is on this thing, in the way that opportunities are opening up for him. And I know that there's no other way that this type of alignment happens unless it is you walking in your purpose. And these brothers are both really soldiers that are uniquely designed for this time and this place. So it's an honor anytime I get the opportunity to share with them. And I'll share with y'all is we actually talk a lot. We actually talk as a group several times a week, all the time. But you know, it is wonderful to be able to share this with all you ladies here today. So I'm gonna hush and turn it back over to the group. I just thank you, and I'm just honored to be here with you all today.
Thank you so much, Charles. So our next scheduled speaker is Omari Maynard. I'm still gonna read his bio, but unfortunately, Omari had a family emergency and he's unable to be here with us face to face, well, through virtual space. He's unable to be with us today. Shamony, who will be speaking later, his queen is her daughter, and she will be touching a bit more in relation to Omari and including him in her presentation as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and read his bio. Omari Maynard is an educator by trade and an artist by craft. He has received a bachelor's degree in marketing from Hampton University, an MBA and a master's in sport business management from the University of Central Florida, and a master's degree in special education from Long Island University. His professional career includes working for the NBA, various sports marketing companies, not-for-profit organizations, and the Department of Education. During these junctures in his career, he has met many people and done many things. However, throughout his journey, the most influential person that he has encountered was Shamony Gibson. Omari met Shamony while working at the Police Athletic League in 2011. They quickly cultivated a friendship that eventually turned into a long-lasting relationship. Over the course of 8 years, their relationship morphed into one that embodied growth, manifestation, and family. In 2016, they started their own business, Artful Living, a lifestyle and event planning business with an emphasis on artistic expression. On February 7th, 2017, they had their first child, Anari Naja Abena Maynard. On September 23rd, 2019, they had their second child, Kari Nile Kojo Maynard. Shamony's transition has been a devastating blow to the family unit and community at large. However, her untimely passing has provided Omari with a drive to live his life as creatively and purposefully as possible. Omari currently works for the Department of Education, teaching high school algebra and geometry. He continues to grow and establish his business, Artful Living. He is also in the process of creating a not-for-profit organization titled the Araya Foundation, which stands for the Association for Reproductive Innovation through Artistry and Healing. And we will hold Omari and his family in our prayers. So we will continue on to the next slide, please. Our next speaker is Bruce McIntyre of the Bronx, New York. He founded the saveARose Foundation in honor of his late spouse, Amber Rose Isaac, who fell victim to birth complications stemming from medical negligence. He is now raising his son, Elias, without his partner, Amber. The saveARose Foundation is aiming to combat and dismantle the systemic flaws within maternal health. Bruce is working with a collective to bring the first ever birthing center to the Bronx and introducing better birthing options to the community. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, my love goes out to Omari and his family. Really wish he could join, but you know, given the circumstances, I do want to send my love out to him and the family. So we are going to be representing Shamony as well. But you know, just to dig into a little bit of my story, Amber and I, you know, it's just a story of two people simply falling in love. I tried to talk to Amber about 3 years ago. Well, no, about 6 years ago, I tried to talk to Amber. And she was in college and she was so focused on her career, and she turned me down. She turned me down, and May of 2018, you know, we kept in communication, and she invited me to her graduation. She was receiving her bachelor's degree in psychology. She wanted to introduce art therapy to the youth. You know, she was very passionate about the youth, about the children of our communities. And it was magic ever since May. We had a beautiful relationship. Amber introduced me to so many new things, and she helped me overcome so many things and helped me better understand myself. She changed me. Every year we would try to rekindle a previous date. So we ended up going to S'moresburg in Brooklyn. We went to the S'moresburg event. Right after the S'moresburg event, we would go to the Purdue, talk about life, talk about goals, what we wanted to accomplish together, what we wanted to push each other to do. Always just planning and strategizing. We ended up leaving the zoo, and we were walking down Bed-Stuy. We found this bookstore, and she wanted to, you know, check out some herbal books. She was very big into making her own concoctions to, you know, boost the immune system, or, you know, whatever she was aiming towards. We ended up coming across this like baby hip hop book, and it was like a baby book. It had Kendrick Lamar on the front, little baby Biggie, little baby Tupac. And she looks back at me and she's telling me, we're not leaving without this book. She started reading it, and I could, you know, as she's reading the pages, I can just see her glowing. You know, she just had this warm smile to her. And she looks at me and she says, it's about time that we start thinking about a family. So, you know, we talk about it for a couple of months. And then we find out that she is pregnant September 19th. So we start planning for this baby. We're, you know, planning ahead and, you know, doing all of the right things. And everything was going really good. We were very excited for this. Coming into February, you know, Amber was already facing, you know, incompetence, you know, throughout her first trimester. It just seemed like it was normal at that point. You know, but during her second trimester is when she really started to face neglect. You know, she's asking her OBGYN tons of questions. You know, she's a first-time mother. She's curious. She wants to know what's going on with her body. She wants to make sure that she's doing all of the right things and that the baby is going to be okay. The services were very short with us. Amber is in her second trimester, about to transition into her third. and COVID is starting to appear. So I worked on Wall Street, and working on Wall Street, you kind of hear everything first, especially when the stock market starts to crash. You know, so we're trying to get everything set up for Amber before these businesses start shutting down. Amber is trying to, you know, get early FMLA. She's trying to leave work early, just a month early. She was a head teacher at an early life program in Harlem. And there are kids that are being sent to school sick with no doctor's notes. The school isn't supposed to accept it, but you know they're allowing it because they're losing money. You know, these kids are coming to school sick. They're coughing on Amber. They're rubbing saliva on Amber. They're kicking her in the stomach when she goes to pick them up. You know, at this point, we were unaware that her health was deteriorating. I started noticing that she was always having this shortness of breath, weakness in her fatigue, always having, you know, constant headaches, or she just was always sick. And you know, she's trying to get early FMLA, and she's bringing up all of these concerns to her OBGYN. Elias was due May 30th. Amber wanted to leave in April. You know, she's voicing all of these concerns to her OBGYN. Her OBGYN isn't really being attentive to Amber. You know, she's telling Amber, well, there's other pregnant women working right now. Why can't you work? There are other pregnant women going through this. Mind you, Amber has family that works in the medical system. And there are white women who are due after Amber who are being dismissed, and they're getting their early FMLAs. So it was confusing to Amber and I. You know, she's telling her OBGYN all of her worries, and instead of the OBGYN placing on the statement that Amber, you know, all of her concerns, she stated that Amber wanted to leave for personal reasons. So HR at Amber's job denied her FMLA, and we had to redo the process. Complaints were filed. Amber's mother had worked at a Montefiore location for 25 years. And she filed a complaint against the OBGYN. And instead of the OBGYN, you know, then being more attentive to Amber, she was more or less trying to figure out who Amber's mother was and what was her relationship to Montefiore. So she really didn't care about Amber. She wasn't trying to tailor any needs for Amber. So then the OBGYN tells us, well, if you want to leave early, if you want early FMLA, you have to go through a high-risk doctor. Now that's the only reason she appointed us to a high-risk doctor, not because of, you know, her platelet levels dropping. So then in March, telehealth is being introduced. Well, I'm sorry, late February, telehealth is being introduced. They're asking Amber all of the same questions. She was getting so fed up because, you know, she's coming in, she's leaving her second trimester into her third. She's supposed to be seen every 2 weeks, transitioning into every week, and she's not being seen at all. She didn't get seen at all throughout March. She was always voicing her concerns. Oh, take your iron pills, check your blood pressure, check with us next week. She was getting tired of it. So then we started to seek midwifery options. We were trying to find a home birthing option because we didn't feel safe giving birth into hospitals where they're filling up with COVID patients. It's very unsettling for her. So we found a group called Birth from the Earth, Nubia Martin, spoke with Nubia. We loved her. Nubia fell in love with us. We're trying to get some updated blood work over to Nubia. We're trying to get the updated blood work from the blood lab and from the doctors, and they're taking forever to respond back to us. We're leaving voicemails, emails. We're not hearing anything back. Yet again, we have to reach out to her mother, to reach out to somebody, to reach back out to us. It seemed like that was a weekly thing. We finally get some blood results back in, and we send them to Nubia Martin on April 3rd. Nubia tells us that she can't accept us because Amber is too high risk. She needs medical assistance immediately. We can't figure out what's going on. We're hearing it may be preeclampsia. She's developing anemia as well at this point. Her fatigue is getting very weak. It went from us being able to, walk half a mile to the park to barely being able to make it down the block, and I have to carry her back home. So we're trying to figure out, other options because we can't have a home birth now. So we're trying to see if maybe we can get into a birthing center in Brooklyn. Yet again, Amber's too high risk. So her mother, we ended up leaving one Montefiore location and transitioning to the Montefiore location where her mother worked. They were going to have us prepared with a head surgeon, told her mother all of these promises. They're going to take care of her. They're going to keep an eye on her. They didn't do that at all. We went to go get some blood work done. In April, because we're getting closer and closer to our due date, trying to figure out what's going on, what we're going to do. We're not hearing anything back from these blood labs. Yet again, we have to have her mother reach out. They're telling us to come back in on the 17th. So we go in on the 17th to get some more blood work done. Amber's there waiting for over an hour because they have no recollection of her just being there a couple of days before. They couldn't find it in their system, which was unsettling as well because they had records from her being there February 24th, the day after her birthday. So that 17th is when Amber was writing about, on Twitter, her last tweet, that she wanted to write a tell all about the incompetence and the negligence that she was facing during her pregnancy. They call us back the very next day, apologizing. The doctors are blaming the people at the lab. The people at the lab are blaming the doctors. They're telling us that she needs to come in immediately for treatment. So we rush to the hospital. Amber's scared. She doesn't want to go up at all by herself. Very scared because she knows that they've been ignoring her this whole time. She's developing these issues and they're not paying attention to her. She's scared that she's gonna die. She's very happy that the baby's very healthy. She was one of the most healthiest people I've known. But she was scared for herself. She was scared that she wasn't gonna make it. And she was right. On April 20th, they induced her labor. They induced her labor. And, you know, the whole time that she was there between the 18, trying to figure out what was going on with her. They couldn't figure out what was going on with her. And on the 20th, they finally came to the conclusion that she had HELP syndrome. And what HELP syndrome is a serious complication of high blood pressure during pregnancy. Hemolysis is elevated liver enzymes, I'm sorry, low platelet count. You know, the syndrome usually develops in the 3rd trimester, I believe, of the pregnancy. The whole time they were trying to test her for COVID. She took 2 COVID tests and they both came back negative. So they had to rule that out. They induce her labor. They tell me to come up around like 6:30. I do my COVID test. I pass my COVID test. They allow me to be beside Amber. So I get there and she's dilated by 2 centimeters. She's not in any type of pain. She's not feeling sick. She's just feeling discomfort in her buttocks area from the pressure of the baby, of course. You know, they're coming to me with all these procedures, and C-section being the very last procedure. It seemed like they were getting a bit impatient because, you know, they were supposed to induce Amber for, you know, a day or 2. I was there with Amber for maybe a few hours. They came back, told us that they needed to perform a C-section on her. Her platelet levels are decreasing even further. And they want to get the baby out before it decreases even more. We're asking them, you know, do you have everything ready? Are you guys fully prepared? They're telling us, yeah, ready. Be in the room with Amber. And it wasn't good enough. You know, the nurse was telling us, oh, well, you can't hug on Amber. You can't be too close to Amber because of COVID. You know, mind you, she's talking to us as a nurse and she's saying, well, you know, we don't know who has COVID. We may even have COVID. We've never been tested. So the nurses aren't being tested for COVID. Very unsettling at this point. And due to the COVID rule, we're also not allowed to have a doula present. They're not allowing doulas or midwives in the hospital. So I'm talking to Amber, I'm talking to Elias. I talk to him every night. We were reading to him, singing to him, talking to him every single night. And that was the last thing she had me doing was, you know, talking to him, making him alert, you know, he's on his way. But he wasn't ready. He was still wanting to grow. He was still attached to the placenta. It wasn't his time to come out. So I said my goodbyes to Amber. I tried to get her in the correct mind space that we're going home. This is what we wanted. This is what we've worked for. And she's looking at me and she's telling me, yes, we're going home. All 3 of us are going home. And she kept repeating that. That was the last time I seen Amber alive. They're asking, they took me away to this waiting room, told me that Amber will be back here in about 20 minutes. 30 minutes goes by, I'm not hearing anything. So I'm deciding to sit in the hallway, I'm waiting. And I see them rush off with my son. And soon after that, I hear the announcer state that they need all medical emergency staff to the OR. They had to repeat that she was a non-COVID patient 3 times before people really started rushing to her aid. I'm asking nurses what's going on. They're not telling me anything. They're asking me, oh, is there anybody that could be here for you? Well, Amber's mother's here. She decided that, you know, she wanted to stay to work the late shift to be close to Amber. So they allowed me to call her up to be with me. I'm trying to fill her in on what's going on. They're still not telling us anything. You know, fast forward a bit, you know, I get to see my son for the first time. We're still not getting any updates about Amber. A nurse finally had talked to me. And I know it's just, you know, purely out of what she was feeling. You know, the nurse is talking to me and I'm asking her, you know, I know Amber has low platelets. Her blood is unable to clot at this point. Her blood is water-like. I'm asking them, hey, did they sew her up from the C-section? No, they opened her up some more. Performed a emergency hysterectomy on Amber, just to find out that that's not what she was bleeding from. So they took out her uterus for no reason. Cut her up even more to massage her heart manually for 2 hours. All of that cutting, knowing that she has low platelets and her blood is unable to clot. Later on that night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, they came back to us and told us that we're sorry for your loss. Mind you, during the COVID era, they're allowing us to set up a family room. They set our family up. So all of these were bad signs leading up to this. I lost myself when they told me that Amber passed. But I knew I had responsibilities. I started combating against systemic racism within the healthcare system since the day after. On April 22nd, I decided that I wanted to fight for this cause. And it's been foot on the gas ever since. I started up a foundation, saveARose Foundation, in Amber's honor, to combat against the systemic flaws within the medical system, to fight for families, to fight for mothers, to fight for fathers in our positions, and also to fight for children. I wish I could go more into detail about what they've done to Amber, but I can't at this moment. However, I have been speaking to doctors, OBGYNs, midwives, doulas, the whole birthing community on different outcomes that could have happened. Amber gave birth prematurely through C-section by a month and 10 days. Even though Elias was premature, there was still an option, from what I'm finding out from other doctors, that she could have had the baby 6 weeks prior. You know, my son would have stayed in NICU longer. However, they both would be here. So there were options that weren't presented to us. The more I study, the more I learn that there's a repetitive cycle to where information is delayed. They fail to deliver valuable information that could save a life, and they wait until it's too late. And this is a constant known cycle. Every year in the US, between 700 to 900 women die from pregnancy-related complications. Our maternal mortality rate is higher than any other income country, and these countries have managed to reduce their rates. And I'm not understanding why we can't do it here in the US, but we're paying the most in healthcare. That makes absolutely no sense. You know, what's really killing these mothers are cardiovascular disease, hemorrhaging, high blood pressure causing seizures or strokes, blood clots, infections, HELLP syndrome. These are some of the leading causes to maternal mortalities. You know, for every death, over 100 women suffer from one of these severe conditions. And these lead to pregnancy-related complications and, you know, during childbirth, resulting in over, I believe it's 60,000 women per year developing one of these conditions. You know, everybody knows that maternal morbidity is on the rise in the US. If you don't know, then you should know now. These are life-altering changes. It's estimated that somewhere between 1.5% to 2% of the 4 million deliveries that occur every year in these countries, in this country, I'm sorry, is associated with one of these events. So that's 5 to 6 women every hour having a blood clot, having a seizure, having a stroke, receiving a blood transfusion, or having developing end organ damage, such as kidney failure. And what's unforgivable is that over 60% of these deaths are deemed to be preventable. You know, there are concrete steps that they could implement in standard procedures that can prevent these outcomes, and they can save lives. They just have to ensure equal standards between hospitals. You know, you have to value the quality of care for pregnant women before, during, and after pregnancy, which is assured through, you know, midwives or doula service. You know, insurers should have more patients for a home birth like they would do for hospitals. We need these services to be more accessible and more affordable to the people of communities. These women are scared for their lives, and they don't trust these doctors or hospitals. So, you know, why not put them in the hands of people who will be more attentive to our families' needs? You know, the Bronx has the highest C-section rate in New York City. Mind you, 60% of these are deemed to be preventable. 60% of these C-sections are deemed to be preventable. It gives me reason to believe that these hospitals are putting profit over people. They're securing an extra $3,800 to $4,000 per cesarean versus a natural birth. They're clearly putting profit over people. It's evident. You know, looking at the statistics, I honestly believe that there is a bias agenda that has infiltrated our human and civil rights. And it needs to be changed now rather than later, because we don't have until later. You know, the longer we wait, the more lives are in danger, and we're failing families. So it needs to be changed as soon as possible. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bruce. Takia Sakina Ballard is a certified nurse midwife who partners with birthing families to inspire them to become savvy birthers. After spending nearly 2 decades as a midwife with nearly 1,000 births in a hospital, birth center, and home, Takia knows what it truly means to offer a unique type of healthcare that is unbiased and respectful in every way. Takia is the voice of the new podcast, The Savvy Black Birther, launching this September. A consultant to specifically Black birthing families seeking advocacy, support, and education, and a mentor to aspiring healthcare professionals through her mentorship program via Sakina Health, a virtual health service. Although retired from hands-on clinical practice, she is the community's midwife, a safe place for unbiased, evidence-based, empowering information. We welcome Takia Sakina Ballard.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I was trying not to get emotional, so bear with me, okay? I'm not gonna bore you with the statistics or the history of birth in America. It's pretty evident, and the speakers before me have done an amazing job of highlighting birth in the United States. What I will tell you is that this system that we are fighting is not a system that just happened yesterday. It's a system that has been in place since the time we were placed on this on the grounds of this country. It has been in place for a long, long time, and it's not a system that is not going to go away overnight either. It is a system that we are going to have to dismantle, and we're a system that we are going to have to eradicate from our minds. So I had a whole list of things that I had prepared to say, and I think I'm gonna not say those things and not speak from those points, but I'm gonna say what's coming to my heart right now. And that is that while Black women are faring worse than any other race in America when it comes down to birth, birth is horrible in America, period. And other countries, like many of the other people have said, are faring far better, and their rates are actually improving and ours are not. And so Bruce, you said something, well, I don't understand why. You actually had hit the nail on the head. It is profit. It is capitalism. It is money. If I could tell you the politics that people like me have to go through on a daily basis to fight for women, it would blow your mind. And so one of the reasons why I walked away from midwifery just this past February, actually, not because of COVID, not because I didn't love what I do, not because it wasn't important to me to take care of Black and Indigenous birthing people. None of those reasons were the reasons why I decided to retire. The reason why I decided to retire was because I was tired. Simply put, I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of not able to make it a better place for women. We've known these statistics for a long, long time. And we've been trying since the dismantling of Black midwifery in this country, decades, months, days, weeks, every day we were out there, even to the point of losing our right of living, right? And being incarcerated. Midwives from the beginning of our inception here have been fighting for safe birth of Black and birthing people. And what has happened is we've been discredited. We've been marginalized. We've been burnt at the stake, literally. And the ability to do that, we've birthed this nation. Black midwives have carried this, okay? And then to take it all away from us, and then to know that in the inception of all of this, in 1970s, when they brought in, or actually I'll go back before 1970s, in the 1940s and 1950s, when they started looking at birth and they made it industrialized. Women couldn't eat. You were separated from your partner. You were birthing alone. You were having forceps driven up into your vagina to take out your baby. You were having twilight sleep and didn't know what was happening to your body. This is the history of obstetrics in our society. And that is erased from our history because, simply put, we want to make it seem nice that when you go into these industrialized places, you believe you're getting the best care, right, Charles? You believe that you're going to a facility that has the top-notch you know, providers and the sciences, they're advanced, but what they don't tell you is that there are pitfalls. There are pitfalls that are there that are made to feel, allowed you to make you feel that you are getting the best care. Now, while it might be advanced and all of those things, the technologies might be there, they're there for sick people, not for well people. And the reality is that those pitfalls lead to more and more interventions. One of those pitfalls is the electronic fetal monitoring system that was put in place in the 1970s, and ever since then, cesarean section rate has increased about 400%. The majority of these births that Bruce and Charles and Shamony's husband was talking about, these were related to those kinds of births, surgical births, rushing of babies coming out of their mother's wombs, not listening to women, not understanding and not putting them at the forefront of the decision-making table. At some point in our history, women lost their right to govern their bodies, but Black women never had that right. And we must understand that when we subscribe as healthcare consumers, we are subscribing to this ideal. When we step foot in these places, we are saying, yes, you may do these things, or yes, give you an example of what a pitfall is. The minute you walk through the door at a healthcare facility, the woman is made to strip down to her bare nothings. Why? Why take that dignity away from her? Why must she put on a gown and take everything off and be cooked up to a monitor? For what purpose? Oh, but we're told that that is normal. This is providing excellence of care. But what that does is devalues her. Secondly, she's now taken away from her loved ones, her support, her doulas, her husband, her partners, her family, whoever it is, and made to be isolated of them to ask questions about whether she's being, abused. Now, granted, that's supposed to be discussed, but can it be discussed in a way that doesn't take her away from them for hours? There's so many different pitfalls, and we need to recognize those pitfalls so we can safeguard ourselves. So what are you saying, Takia? I'm saying that this is a problem of the system. This is a problem of racism, but it's also a problem of healthcare consumerism. Bottom line, if I could rescue every Black female, every woman who goes out and births her baby, I would. And let me tell you, I almost died trying. This is why I had to walk away and do this a different way, a way that people can hear this on a larger scale, a way that people can wake up and say, oh, wait. Just because they have the latest, awards doesn't mean a hill of beans. At the end of the day, what matters is, am I heard? Do I feel safe? Am I allowed to bring my loved ones here? Let me tell you, I've done birth in all three settings. And I had to walk away from industrialized obstetric care because it wasn't feeling good in my soul. When are we as healthcare providers going to realize that this is a soul work? That's number one. At the end of the day, it is not about money. It is not about how many births you get. And let me tell you, when you're in those settings, there's an indoctrination that is happening. How do I know? Because I was indoctrinated. When I was in those settings, I found myself talking about people who had Medicaid. I found myself talking about the brothers who were in the corner and didn't know how to advocate or be with their partner. They just looked like they were ghetto. I found myself talking in reports to other midwives and other staff to give report when we're handing off a patient between shifts. I found myself doing it, and I had to say to myself, wait, what am I doing? How am I being indoctrinated into a system and a way of belief? And that's not who I am. That's not what I went into this profession in the first place for. We as a provider need to wake up. I'm talking about nurses, midwives, doctors, every provider. Not only does this need to be a multidisciplinary approach, Dr. Barnes, but this has to be a multidisciplinary approach from people whose philosophy of care has changed. Period. If the person who is birthing is not at the head of the decision-making table, and if you don't feel like you're at the head of that decision-making table, walk away. Because at the end of the day, you are an expert. And the minute we just remember and decide in our minds that we are the expert of our own bodies, that's the moment that our expectations of the services that we are consuming change. There is no way in hell anybody's going to tell me when I walk up in that healthcare facility, I don't care who I'm seeing. It could be the next prized person who won so many awards all over the world. There's no way that that person's going to tell me about me. I've been living with me all my life, so I'm the expert too. And the minute we start, and I'm not talking, this is just not for maternity care, this is for all care. We need to stop with that thinking that we don't know enough. We know more than we think we know. And we need to start putting ourselves at the top of that chain of people. It's a privilege to be involved in someone's care. That's how we have to give care. Those of us who are nurses and people of healthcare providers on this forum, and those who are receiving healthcare on the other end, it's a privilege to be invited into someone's care. And that is how we have to view healthcare. So while we're calling for the dissemination of this information, while we're calling for health officials to change this, while we're calling for there to be a reform for healthcare, specifically for women of color who are birthing, we need to also call for a reframing of our minds. That is what I have to say. And the other thing is we need to know how to hold each other up, because I'm telling you, I'm not the only midwife you're going to hear this from. We're struggling. We are struggling. You wonder why there's not a lot of us out there? You wonder why when you pick up your Google or you look at your phone and try to search, Bruce, I'm sure you didn't find a lot of us out there when you were searching. I know, because we're not out there. Not because we're not trying, but because we've also been indoctrinated into the system. The system tells us how we should be licensed. The system tells us what we should do. The system tells us how we should get paid, okay? I have been in debt most of my majority of my midwifery care or my midwifery practice, in debt. Not because I didn't know how to run a business, but because I was taking care of majority people that look like me. So my insurance was about 95% Medicaid. And so because I was taking 95% Medicaid and I dared not charge people outside of that because that's against the law, I wasn't making a lot of money. So my white counterparts were making about $12,000 to $13,000 per birth, which is a fraction of the cost in the hospital, okay? And I was making somewhere between 4 and 6, living in New York City. So you tell me how business can be sustained and how I can continue to carry the burden or help to carry the burden with other midwives. This system doesn't allow it. And so in order for these things to change, we really, midwives at large, there's a lot of us out there trying from all different parts of the US. What we're calling for is a complete movement out of industrialized birthing spaces. Those who are low risk, a complete movement, a complete reframing of your mind, educate each other, reform your community, involve doulas, involve good education, be informed. And if you have to go into those industrialized spaces, then be well informed, be educated, know what those pitfalls are and avoid them at every step. Be healthy, all of the things. So I know I went totally off of what I wanted to say or what I thought I should say. And perhaps maybe I said what needed to be said. And so I hope that you've taken what I have said in love and honoring everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Takia. You definitely said what needed to be said. Our next speaker is Katia Cadet. She is a labor doula, postpartum doula, lactation counselor, and overall perinatal health advocate with over 13 plus years experience as a doula. She has experienced many facets and environments within the birthing process. Katia has trained with Doulas of North America, trained and certified with Earth's Natural Touch, Birth Care and Beyond, and also certified as a pregnant and infancy loss advocate. She is currently in training to become a certified lactation counselor. Born and raised in New York, Katia still resides there with her 2 sons and partner. With an overall love for the birthing journey, Katia has provided education and support for many women and couples during their pregnancy, birthing and parenting journey, hoping to change the vibrations and stigma of birth within our community. Welcome, Katia Cadet.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And this is just such a powerful subject that we're talking of, and it's emotional, makes us angry, it makes us upset, and everybody wants to jump in and do something and fix it right now. So as a follow-up, I just want to speak of the context of a doula. You know, doula apparently has become the buzzword. 2020, everybody wants a doula. Everybody wants to become a doula. They don't really know what it is. What a doula is we're not medical professionals. We don't catch babies. We don't prescribe medication. What we do is we provide support and education to the birthing family. Yes, the birthing mother, but I'm using the birthing family because everybody in that circle needs to be educated about this journey that they're about to embark on. And from early on in pregnancy, you know, sometimes I get calls from women who are pregnant 9-10 weeks in, and all the way to birth, to labor, to birth, to postpartum. You know, birth doesn't end when the child is born. You know, there's a whole different aspect postpartum that we deal with also. So what I really want to come here today and to tell you guys is that everyone deserves a doula. It's our right to have a doula. It's not a whole stigma where if you're rich, you only have, you know, you could pay for a doula. It may be expensive. We are in New York, we're trying to have more advocacy to make sure that the birthing family can afford to have a doula. I'm sorry, my computer just blanked out. But also to let everybody know that you are supported. You know, going back to the families, we help educate the parents, we help educate the mother, we allow the mother to have her full body reproductive freedom of herself. The Black woman reproductive freedom, to allow her to understand that whatever her body's going through, to trust her body. You know, a lot of times women are told what's going on with their bodies as opposed to them just feeling and understanding. You know, if I'm having headaches constantly, that's not normal. Recently, there's a whole thing where a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm anemic, that's normal. Having anemia is not a cold, you know, being cold all the time since you were little. It's not a normal thing. You know, get that checked out. You know, a lot of things that happen during pregnancy, women kind of just, you know, and where sometimes we're told and trained by our elders, oh, that's normal. You know, you're having pains here and there. That's normal. Back pain is normal. Headaches are normal. That's not really normal. You know, we push education, we push you're the mother to research what's going on with their bodies. So when they get into their healthcare professionals and have these questions, you know, I'm feeling this way, what can I do to make it better? You know, even when they're in the process of birthing, you know, my water is breaking. What's the reason why it's breaking? We have mothers prepared to deal with any, or partially deal with any situation that may arise, and they're making informed decisions, you know, especially when it comes down, the hospitals are so quick to jump on cesarean sections. Labor doulas and perinatal doulas have substantially decreased the risk of a mother receiving a cesarean section, or surgical birth is what I really like to say. Because they're walking in informed, they're walking in knowing what are the possibilities. If I have an epidural, what are all the things that may happen? You know, it's a staggering effect of you have an epidural and boom, 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 here you have having a C-section. And that may not have been your plan. You wanted a natural birth, but all of a sudden, this is where we are. We allow the mothers to have a voice when they're in the hospital, ask questions, you know, don't allow them to rush you to make a decision. You know, we've empowered mothers to let them say, hey, I need a few minutes to understand what you just told me. Let me consult such and such, and then we'll get back to you. Not every decision needs to be made right then and there, unless it's, you know, a non-emergency situation, which we also encourage them to say, hey, do I need this done right now, or can it wait? You know, what are the effects? You have the right for that information. This is your body. In addition to that, we encourage the families to provide support of the birthing mother also. You know, a lot of times families do not really jump in, you know, they just let them deal with whatever, but we encourage the mother, the father, just to help support the families postpartum. You know, I come in as a postpartum doula. I'll help clean the house a little, you know, help cook a few meals here and there, get the kids together if they need that done, because hey, what, mom is tired, dad may be tired also, or other mom or whoever they live with within that household is tired. They need another person to step in for a moment of time just to get everything back on track, and then you're good to go. I love birth work. I love supporting families. I think we're needed. I think that a lot of issues that we're having now, you know, a lot of when we go into the hospital setting, you know, we're looked at a certain way and they just assume that we don't really need to receive all the information that should be given. You know, you walk in there, they make the decisions for you, and you just have to go with the flow, as opposed to them telling you, hey, this is what's going on with your body. You know, this is what we can do. What do you think? I know that's an odd conversation to have these days, but listen, this is what we're doing. I've come into the place where a lot of moms now are choosing to have out-of-hospital births just because the mortality rate is insane right now. And not only the mortality rate, it's just the morbidity, the maternal morbidity rate is insane. It's ridiculous, especially here in New York. Parents are choosing to have out-of-hospital births. I can't even tell you how many virtual doula sessions I've had. And for them, they're more comfortable in that aspect, which is kind of odd, but they're more comfortable. You're sitting there face to face, they see your one-on-one, and they're allowed to experience the birth how they want it on their own terms. And as much as we're in this 2020 COVID virtual world, it's working. You know, I've seen so many live births. The babies are beautiful. The mother is fine. Maybe a little bit of hemorrhaging, but nothing crazy that you need a major surgery for. And if this is what it took for us to kind of bunker down to the basics of life and saying, hey, let's go back to basics. Let's bring in the midwives and have births at home and just take them out of the hospital setting, because you're getting more of a mortality rate in the hospitals as opposed to home, then maybe that's what we need to do. But I'm just here to say that births, overall is a beautiful thing. You know, it can be and should be a beautiful experience. We don't need to deal with all of these racial issues that we deal with in the hospital settings. We don't have to deal with the condescending tone that maybe are given to the parents, even the doulas. We get it too in the hospitals, you know. This is just the place where we need to even tone the outcomes. You know, we love our Black women, we love our Black babies. We need to make sure that we're populating healthier. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katia. So our final speaker tonight is Shamony Benton Gibson. She is the co-founder and CEO of Spirit of a Woman Leadership Development Institute. It was established in 2002 to educate, elevate, and effect positive and sustainable transformation in the lives of individuals, groups, families, and communities. Under Shamony's leadership and vision, Spirit of a Woman Leadership Development Institute offers innovative coaching, counseling, training experiences to individuals, groups, and organizations seeking to expand their power, purpose, and impact in the world. Ms. Benton Gibson is a licensed practitioner with over 29 years of professional experience. She is also the co-founder of the Oriya Foundation, which means Advancement of Reproductive Innovation Through Art and Healing. It was created in memory of her eldest daughter, Shamony Gibson, who passed away on October 6, 2019, due to complications associated with giving birth to her second child. Shamony's expertise ranges from substance abuse prevention, treatment, and recovery, child welfare, youth development, individual, family, and group counseling, trauma, grief, loss and bereavement, women's health and leadership, birth equity, racial equity, social and restorative justice. And just on a personal note, because Shamony is not expecting me to do this, I would just like to add that Shamony has also created the Wake Up Everybody community. She created it when the lockdown ensued in March of 2020. I've heard her credit her daughter, Shamony, for being the inspiration and directing her from the ancestral realm. For 100 days straight at 7 a.m., every morning facilitators virtually gave of their time and expertise to provide the community with thought healers, address sexual traumas, health, healing through art, and a host of relevant topics. I myself have been able to benefit and transform from this powerful community, which I like to call group therapy on a grand scale. Currently, it runs from Sunday through Thursdays, and the healing continues. With profound gratitude, I would like to welcome Shamony Benton Gibson.
Greetings, family. I wish that we could unmute so that I could hear your voices and experience your energy on a deeper level. My stomach is churning over here because I'm super sensitive to energy, and I know that there are folks in this space who are activated around the stories that have been told and also shook by some of the things that have been said in this space, because you are in the industry, the field of providing healthcare for the Shamonies, the Ambers, the Kiras, the Erica Scotts, the Tiana Jameses, like the women. I can go on, and I will speak more names before we are done because that is important to do. I also want to pay homage to the ancestors. All of us have them. And this is not about anything religious. This is about just a fact that we all have been birthed. Like, I come from the womb of 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 ancestors that I will never know, but I know they existed because I'm here. And you exist because they are here. They were here. And so I just want to share that it's important for us to take a breath. That we heard the story of Kira, and we heard the story of Amber, and we heard the story of why Takia has chosen to step away from a field that she loves, you know, because it doesn't match the passion and the purpose that she was divinely called and fashioned to produce in the world. And I implore you, Takia, to consider coming back on your terms. And then Katia, in the work that you do, I honor you. And you have said many of the things that I was going to say, and rightly so. So I don't have to say any of those things. I can actually speak and name something unapologetically, which is white supremacy, and talk about racism with intention. I always tell people, and I think I said it to Kamila when we were talking the other day, don't invite Shani Renee Benton Gibson to speak around Black maternal health. Do not invite me to talk, because I'm scheduled to be a keynote for the American Pediatric Association at the end, towards the end of October. Do not ask me to come if I cannot say white supremacy, if I can't speak about structural, interpersonal, and institutional racism, if I can't talk about white privilege and power and how it works and oppression. I am not the one if I cannot say those things. And so I want to share from a mindset of habituation. What do I mean by that? Spirit gave this to me to say because I'm speaking to folks who are melanated folks, and I'm also speaking to people who are in the field doing this work every day unless you're retired. So habituation has you deliver the standard of care from habit, from, you know, just from rote. This is what they told me to do. This is what I've been doing for 10 years. This is what I've been doing for 15 years. This is what I've been doing for 20 years. And that's not a workable way of being when you're talking about an individual or a family that comes in that is unique in their own way, right, into a space that requires you to pay attention to their story, how their body works, what the dynamics are for them, their cultural practices, the way their accent flows from their mouths. And if we have bias about that, oh, how a Haitian American speaks, or oh, how someone from Cuba speaks, or someone from Afghanistan speaks, then we already have a problem. Your listening for them is filtered through your own bias, and therefore how you serve them will be impacted. Yes, I can speak about my daughter's story. And yes, it's powerful. And yes, it's necessary to share that Shamony Gibson was my eldest daughter, and she transitioned on October 6, 2019, due to complications associated with giving birth to her second child, Kari, Nile, Kojo, Maynard. And that she's the mother of Anari, Naja, Abena Maynard. That she's the partner of Omari Maynard. Those are important things to say. The sister of Jasmine Nicole Gibson and the sister of Najaya Sekou Naeem Worrell. Those are important things to say. However, what she would want me to say is what needs to be said to this particular group of people based on the charge and the power that you wield. So I'm going to do that. And I always say, maybe you won't invite me back, but you can never say I didn't speak truth, all right? So we talk about habituation, standard of care. Standard of care only means the degree of prudence and caution that is required for an individual, who is charged by license or certification or accreditation to do specific things. If I only operated from the standard of care as me, as required as a licensed psychotherapist and licensed social worker in the field, there are many people under my watch that would have killed themselves. There are many people under my watch that would have continued to use drugs and alcohol. There are many people under my watch that would have hurt or harmed their children another day. So standard of care is not sufficient, especially for what is happening to Black and brown women in this country and abroad. It's not sufficient. So I charge every single body in this space to actually look at how you show up, to look at that. And while, once again, I'm speaking to predominantly women and people with melanated skin, internalized racial oppression and inferiority has us operate from white paradigms and do the very thing that the oppressor does when we're serving our people. And so I cannot assume that because you're in the skin that looks similar to mine, that we show up with the standard of care, beyond the standard of care in mind, or we show up with respect and courtesy and a desire to do the absolute best we can to make sure that women not only survive, but their babies also survive and that they thrive after they give birth. Because it has already been said, giving birth is not it. It's the preparation. It's before she gets pregnant or they get pregnant. It's during the pregnancy and how they get treated, not rushed out or not listened to. It's during the experience of labor and delivery, not being forced to lay down or told get back in bed or told this is too much or why are you asking for that or no, you can't eat or no, your mate can't be in here, which a lot of us have experienced, heard stories about or actually done, in the execution of our work. And I say our because I hold myself equally accountable as a reproductive justice activist and advocate. I'm equally as responsible. So we talk about social determinants of health, education, economic status, the physical environment in which you live. Shamony is an outlier. Amber is an outlier. Kira is an outlier. Serena Williams, outlier. Beyonce, they said she had complications, outlier. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that I don't care if she's using drugs. I don't care about her immigration status. I don't care if she's mentally ill. She deserves quality care, respect, and attention, and love. Imagine that. Bringing love to every single patient that you serve. Imagine that. I'm also crystal clear that some of us are in this work not by divine design or call, but by recognition of the prosperity that being in the field like this can bring, right? I say this unapologetically. Some of us were forced into the medical field because my grandmother, my mother, my grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother was a nurse. So therefore I must be a nurse. No, that's not an automatic. Some things are called and some things are done by choice and by design or orchestration of your own mind or the pressure of others. So I implore you, if you are not called to this field, then consider where you are called to. Or if you are called to the field, consider recalibrating your commitment to the field so that you can show up and show out inside of this context of providing quality, equitable, loving, supportive care and covering for women and their families. So let's take a breath. This is a lot to take in, and I know bellies are flipping, but once again, I unapologetically live my purpose, which is to utilize the word in all forms to ignite mind, body, and spirit transformation across the planet. That means in this virtual town hall as well. So if we never see each other again, I can rest in knowing that I said what needed to be said. Internalized racial oppression and inferiority impacts those with the highest levels of education. You can still feel like you're an imposter and do things an imposter would do, no matter what your title is, and impact the lives and the forward movement of someone. And you know, just because a woman doesn't pass as a result of care that was not quality care, how she's impacted, because I hold space for them every other week when I do my support group, how her body is still in pain because of an epidural for a C-section that wasn't needed. She can't even sit up straight or move like she used to move or dance like she used to dance. The trauma, PTSD in her body because of what happened, giving birth to a baby and the baby is born still because some level of misguidance or lack of follow-up was done during the course of her maternal care. These are things that are happening to our people. And so we have to be accountable on a level that is beyond any thought about accountability that you ever came into the work with. Now that we know what we know, and I don't assume everybody that is in this space knew about the stats or knew about the impact. Now that we know what we know, my charge is, what will you do about it? For some, it might be doing what Katia did, which is to step out and retire. And Katia, you look too doggone young to be anybody's retired anyone. But I trust that as what you have learned in the field will be utilized if you're not returning to the field, to make sure that younger women coming up, or men, can step in and become midwives. Because it doesn't have to be a woman only. It's about somebody who's declared themselves to be this for the world. And I trust that you will take the information and how you so eloquently shared and emotionally shared, that you will do that to add to the activism and the advocacy so that this crap, this scourge, can be transformed. I charge you to do that. I also want to talk about the fact that when we deal with white paradigms, when we're dealing with inequity, when we're dealing with models for how life is supposed to be lived, from commercials to talk shows to the series that we watch on TV, and we don't see people who look like us, then that paradigm kind of dictates how we show up and how we think about ourselves. As a little girl, and I'm going to be 52 next week, I made up that Black and brown bodies couldn't be loving because of what I saw. I made up that sexual expression, like really quality sexual expression and love and connection, was relegated to white people. I speak that truth just like Takia spoke the truth. When you have this belief about yourself, anything anybody outside of you can do can't do as much harm as you can do about your own belief, regarding your own belief about yourself. If you have self-hate, then if you're serving someone that looks like you, that can be perpetuated. So today I could be talking about what C-sections do and what the impact is. Today I could be talking about what Bruce mentioned and what was mentioned earlier about the stats, but that's already been done. I explicitly speak to you about white supremacy and how institutional and structural racism is impacting the outcomes for our people, and some of us are gatekeepers that perpetuate that. And so once again, I charge you to look and examine, interrogate, and choose powerfully what your next steps are going to be. What I will say is, what actions can we take to transform this? We can look at and interrogate data. In white supremacist culture, data is weaponized. It's weaponized. And the narrative gets dictated by people who do not look like us. So interrogate the data. Don't just go by what is being told to you or what you see in a book, because under white supremacist culture, the written word has power over people's lived experiences. So once again, looking at what there is to do and put in. Takia mentioned, and I keep calling your name because you said so much powerful stuff that aligns with what Spirit gave me to say today. You mentioned, oh my gosh, and I lost it. I just lost it. I had a menopause moment. What I will say, let me go back and share this, that it's so important for us to look at, this is what you said, the absence of Black and brown or BIPOC midwives. I remember going to a conference in the city. I live here in New York, and I was with a midwife and I was with a doula. And it was for midwives. So I assumed that when I walked into the space, I was going to see midwives that looked like my grandmother and my great grandmother who were midwives. When I went in, 95% of the people in the room were white women. I was shocked. I had no idea. So let's look at creating workability so that those who are called to midwifery can actually afford to do it and not be in so much debt that they have to leave the field, right? Or they have to struggle and work 3 and 4 jobs just to make ends meet. Let them live their purpose and do it affordably and actually have abundance so that the field can be filled with folks that understand the power of the grand midwife and execute it from a form of purpose and not a space of this is the grandiose aspect of it, like the role as opposed to the privilege, as Takia spoke of. Funding, so important for the education. Diversifying the workforce. I say that when I see a Black midwife, it's like seeing a unicorn, right? Shamony's midwife was tired, which contributed to some of the things that were missed. She was running around trying to be there because everybody's using her name and everybody's telling folks, go to her, go to her, go to her. She was tired. And therefore, no shade, no judgment. That's just the truth. When we find out that there's someone we can trust, we all flock to the person. I'm somebody that folks come to for therapy and for grief counseling and things like that. But I'm only one person. And so it's out of integrity for someone to be up for 36 hours, sleep for an hour, and then go to the next birth. We need more midwives. We need more doulas. And we need them to be paid a living wage and beyond that, an abundant wage so they can do what they're called to do. And I'll say a couple of more things before I close out. Charles said that he never expected Kira to not come out of the hospital after giving birth to Langston. And I, unfortunately, being in the field, being in this work for as long as I have been, what was at the back of my mind is my daughter going to make it? I convinced myself that she would because I'm an activist and an advocate and have been in this work so long and talking to so many people. I convinced myself because she worked out while she was pregnant. She took herbs. She had a doula. She had a midwife. She was doing research. She slept. She did what she needed to do. She talked about it. She was planning her home birth. I made up that all was well. And she's not here, right? So I didn't have the blessing of just thinking to myself that it was going to be okay. Despite all of that stuff that she did, when we were at the hospital, it crossed my mind, what if she doesn't make it? What if the baby doesn't make it? What if both of them don't make it? Kari is here. My daughter is gone. Let's not sleep on anything. Don't make up because she has X amount of money, she has a mate, any of that, that she's going to make it, that the baby will make it. Operate as if all mothers of color are in danger, and then bring that level of standard above what they told you to do to all of your interactions with the mothers. If some of you are working with women that are giving birth and families that are preparing for new life to enter on the planet. So how I will close out is with the names. We speak the names with intention because that's what we're called to do as melanated people. Our cultures have been snatched from us, so I'll put it back in place. Kira Johnson, Erica Scott, Shamony Makiba Gibson, Tiana James, Amber Isaacs, Yolanda Shifra Kadima, Dr. Shalon Irving, Arika Trim, Shayaja Washington, Nicole Thea, and so many more whose names have not been called and who have been forgotten because they become numbers. They are not numbers, they are people with stories. And some family has been decimated because they are not here. And beyond even that, think about the mother who right now is fighting for her life and baby because of mismanagement or being ignored. I thank you for listening. If your belly is flipping, just rub it and do what you gotta do. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamony, Gibson. Very powerful speech right there, and we will go to Q&A. There are some questions for you and all the panel speakers. We're going to turn over to acknowledgement of our special guest today, and Nicole Francis.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Francis. At this time, we'd like to acknowledge our special guests who joined us today during this meeting. If there are any special guests, political guests in this town hall, can you please raise your hand?
Okay, Marika Scott McFadden is on.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Deputy Borough President in the Bronx, and I'm, just having a time with the topic in terms of just, it is so much, there's so much there, the experiences are so much, and I, like many of the other speakers, had things that I wanted to say or thought I wanted to say, and people, prior speakers have talked about statistics, they've talked about many of the things that I intended to say, but I'll speak a little bit quickly about how I've arrived here today and the point that I wanted to make. First, I'll thank Dr. Barnes and the Chi Eta Phi sorority for having such a empowering talk. It has been inspiring to me. I actually, as a mom, gave birth over 18 years ago. So for all intents and purposes, I'm here, I'm great. My son is well, he's 18 years old, but the experience itself was something that was, it left me with a pause. So I've always felt like I would, as far as family members and friends, I would not allow that family member or friend to give birth without advocacy. It didn't matter, night or day, call me, whatever, because some of my experiences were mirrored in some of the stories. And now, as in the position of Deputy Borough President here in the Bronx, when COVID happened, we experienced a great disparity in services, and is a known phrase of people of color that when the country gets a cold, we get pneumonia, and in the Bronx we get even worse, and we've seen those disparities in as it related to healthcare and COVID. But in addressing those, I became even more aware of this what was going on in the Bronx in terms of healthcare with Black maternal morbidity rates, in a scenario where I thought, here I am someone who lives in the Bronx and gave birth in the Bronx and had issues. I had, even in this role, did not know that it was such a severe disparity, and have worked through the Borough President's Office to put together what we're doing on October 14th, which is a task force that we're putting together to examine some of these issues. But really, again, the opportunity to sit and become even more educated emotionally and spiritually through the experiences of all the speakers, the exhaustion in the system, the reality that this is not just a phenomenon, but it is a systematic issue of racism in healthcare, that there are issues that are seriously at play and in need of advocacy. And I am hopeful, because I always say hopeful, that when you know better, you do better. And we are in a situation where we're being confronted daily with affirmations that let us know that our inner feelings are not just what we feel. Our experiences are just not individual, but they're systematic, and we can be a part of what it takes to improve our situation as women, as Black women, and Black people in this country. I don't want to take up too much time, but my heart is full, having heard all of the speakers before me, and being a part of this conversation is so impactful. I will take this activism and continue, which as I said before, was something that I helped within myself, within my family, within my friend group, that this is something that I thought was, not systematic and systemic. And now, having arrived at that, I want to be a part of the solution. Whatever that is, the advocacy that will come from myself as the deputy borough president through the borough president's office, and bringing that advocacy to the Bronx and to the city of New York as a whole. And that's all I'll say. I'd say thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Scott McFadden. Your words.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Assemblywoman Alicia Hadman.
Good afternoon, everyone, especially to the members of Chi Eta Phi. I'm the Assemblywoman from the 29th District, which is in Southeast Queens. I represent the communities of Rosedale, Laurelton, Springfield Gardens, Adelaide Park, St. Albans, Holliston, Jamaica. And this subject matter touches me personally because I lost my sister-in-law 14 years ago when she went into St. Luke's Hospital to give birth to my niece, and she didn't come home the next day. We got the call late at night that we had to go to the hospital, and it's not a time that I think about. I thought it was just like Marika Scott McFadden said, I thought it was like this one-time incident, not knowing how systemic this is. So for this subject matter, for all of the doctors, nurses, doulas, midwives on this call, I have to tell you that in the New York State Assembly, there are more and more Black women who have taken office. So for me, it's pushing this issue to the forefront so we get the resources we need to make sure that we reduce the numbers. We all know the history where, if you think about during slavery, how they felt Black women could endure more pain, or that we didn't feel pain. And I think when I look at, I used to be director of minority affairs at a medical school, and I saw all of the young people that were coming in, and I wondered how many of them encounter Black doctors who were teaching them. And I was hoping, I said, I would always tell the incoming students, I hope you think about going into teaching, into faculty at some point. And for the nurses, I really hope that's something a lot of you think about. It's because when it comes to the education system, there's not a lot of us there. Sometimes it doesn't pay as much. I know that. But I think sometimes we have to look at where we can interject and intercede where these people are learning how to give medical care. And they're not learning from anyone that looks like us. So I think about education because that's my background. It's a lifelong learning. It's not just K-12. It's not just in our colleges. It's in our medical schools and making sure that we see people that look like us. So I commend all of you on a Sunday afternoon. You could be doing anything else, but you know how important this issue is to Black women and men all over, not just in the city of New York, but all over the state and the country, because wherever we are, we have to think about what do our healthcare systems look like. So I commend all of you. I commend the members of the sorority, making sure that you educate the community on issues just like this. I saw this on my calendar, and Louise, I said I had to be here because I understand how important this is to our community. So as you go on, the census is important because that brings dollars to our communities. Please remember to remind your people, anyone in your household, your neighbors, to fill out that census. We need those dollars, especially in the city, especially in Queens. We need to be counted. And also, you know, the election is coming up. I hope you all vote. I can't tell you who to vote for, but I hope you all vote. Our numbers sends messages to the federal government that we are significant and that we are going to vote. And we're also going to make and show where the dollars should go in this country. We have a lot of work to do as men and women of color, but we'll do more. We'll be more effective if we do it together. I tremendously got educated by all your speakers. This was a tremendous program. I'm glad it's recorded. I hope you continue to share this and share this and share this so we can make sure that those numbers when it comes to Black maternal mortality go down. That is the goal for all of us here. So I just thank you for allowing me these few moments.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Alicia Hyman. At this time, I just want to give one more chance for any other special guests to raise their hand to speak. Okay, I'm going to give it back to Louise.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for that. And thank you to our elected politicians for showing up and making a commitment to do something that we can be able to change what is going on in our communities. And I'm very, very thankful for all of the speakers that came today. And I know we're going to go into Q&A at this point. So if has been any questions, I know that we were inviting people to put questions into the chat. So we'll go ahead and if y'all can share some of the questions, and not sure exactly who they are directed to, but we're starting the Q&A session at this point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions for Bruce. This is from Sis Val. What hospital was Amber in that chose to neglect her care, and has the OBGYN doctor been fired? One second, you're on mute. There we go.
So she actually went to she actually received the treatment from 2 different Montefiore facilities. That's Montefiore Moses and Montefiore Einstein.
Okay, and the other question was, has the doctor been fired?
Oh, to my knowledge, no. The doctor has not been fired yet.
Or has any action been taken?
I can't really speak on that. It's ongoing.
Gotcha. Okay, next question is for Takia. It's from Taryn Ramsey. Thank you so much for this virtual forum. It's been very informative. This question is for Takia. Are there any resources to educate mothers or families regarding questions they should ask their providers on the initial visit to get an understanding of their care?
Yes, there is. Actually, I just released the last episode of my podcast that talks about how to vet a healthcare provider. What are the appropriate questions to ask? How do you know you're picking the right one? As I said before, you have to defer to yourself and to your gut. Our gut is something that we've learned to quiet it. We've learned to not listen to that intuition or to that something, that nudging that tells us that something's not right or something's wrong. And that voice actually becomes louder when we become pregnant as women. And we are institutionalized and told and indoctrinated again and told not to listen. We're told, oh, that's nothing. It happens for everybody. But something is still nudging at you. So I would say definitely listen to that and let that be the guide to picking a good provider. When you're looking at a good provider, you want to know the hard questions, like what's their cesarean rate? What's their rate of death? You want to ask these questions because at the end of the day, if that person doesn't divulge that information to you, you need to lose them like a bad habit. The other thing that you need to consider is, you know, in any other consumerism that we do in the United States, whether it's buying a pair of shoes, whether it's, you know, planning for our wedding, we will vet and do a cake testing. We will vet all kinds of areas of consumerism, but we won't vet healthcare. We have this ideal that's been fed to us that the doctor is always right. And I'm not saying that because I'm not against doctors. I think they're a valuable part of our healthcare system. However, again, we needed to come away from that mindset that they are expert when it comes down to something we feel intuitively. And the other thing too, partners need to be paired up with our women as we're going through this. A lot of times it's been, again, and the statistics I didn't tell you, but back in the 1920s when birth became industrialized, up until about the 1970s, partners, no one was allowed to go with women. And so now we're just trying to resurface the advocacy that women need to have around themselves with birthing. So I really encourage you that looking for a provider is not only an individual thing. You're not doing this alone. You need to take a healthcare professional with you, like a doula, and your advocate support system, which is your community, your friends, your sister, your partner, whoever it is. And they need to be savvy advocates. They can't just be in there talking about what they think they know. See, that's one other thing. We do a lot of opinions when it comes down to healthcare and don't really know. So we need to make sure we're vetting not only the healthcare providers, but we're vetting who we want to bring into our inner circle to help us walk this journey. So that would be what my response is.
Thank you. Next question is from Laurel Booth. What techniques are available to surpass racial superiority issues? What can we do as Black female healthcare providers to not do these things against our own people? So I feel like that question is mostly Shamony and Takia, and also Katia as well. So any of you guys can unmute yourself. Okay, Shamony, I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead.
First and foremost, acknowledging that there is such a thing as white supremacy and racism, that, you know, I do a lot of training and development in different institutions. And sometimes I expect that those who identify as white would push up against the whole concept and how whiteness as a construct or concept impacts them and then others, and how power is utilized to suppress and oppress. But sometimes I bump up against people who identify as Black or brown or indigenous who deny that there is such a thing. And that level of denial can create, once again, the unintentional perpetuation of racism. So first of all, understanding the definition of what it is and the ways in which it shows up, because what we've been taught is the burning crosses, the swastikas, the calling the N-word as manifestations of racism, but how policies are written, you know, in different institutions to prevent folks in certain communities from gaining access. How, when I worked in child welfare, I did I was putting pins up in the areas that I would travel to visit families, and they were all clustered in the same neighborhoods: East New York, Brownsville, Red Hook, South Jamaica, the South Bronx. I'm like, Harlem. I'm like, what is happening here? So that exercise alone, just me doing it, recognizing that there was something in the system that had Black and brown children being taken from these communities more than our white counterparts. So just honoring that there's more education that is needed and seeking that out and being unapologetic about asking those who are teaching you and guiding you and leading you to speak about how they're creating conversations. So those educators that were spoken about earlier, we need doctors before they are approved to be doctors. I don't know what the process is before they get licensed, that you have to demonstrate that you've gone through a certain level of training, not just implicit bias, but actual training that's about racism and how it shows up and manifests itself in the healthcare field. So that's my share around that.
May I also say something? There's an unlearning that has to happen. and that we're completely oblivious to. And I mentioned that word indoctrination. When you are educated in a system, practice in a system, just like Ms. Gibson said, it's something that becomes habitual. So there's something that has to wake up in each and every one of us who are healthcare providers, and we have to realize that we've been indoctrinated, whether we want to believe it or not, whether we believe it's true or not. We've been indoctrinated. It comes out in how we practice. It comes out in what we say. It comes out in the 15 minutes that we spend. We put ourselves at the head, right? So if you got 15, 20 minutes to see somebody, you got a plan of care that you got to get through, a prescription, a standard that you have to get through. You could care less if that woman just got there and her whole world is falling apart. So it's an unlearning that we have to do. And we really, really, really need to get that message. There's a lot of unlearning, because one thing I always say, just because you learned it doesn't mean it was good to learn. Just because it was taught to you doesn't mean it was good to input into your process or to, I mentor students right now. So Ms. Gibson, I am paying for it and I am doing those things. And I had a person say to me, well, I don't want to go through the nursing thing in order to become a midwife, because, it's a lot of stuff going on in there and I don't want to be indoctrinated, because there's a message that you shouldn't become a certified nurse midwife, because that means that you're going to be industrialized and you're going to produce this type of same work, right? Where you're not listening to a person. I'm going to become a certified professional midwife where I'm more, earthy, and this is what's being told to these individuals. And I had to tell her, pause for a second, because that's indoctrination. That's telling you that you are lesser or more than if you're a certain kind of midwife. Again, falling to those patriarchal authorities. So we need, and supremacy and white supremacy that's fed down and it's disseminated into how we're educated. So we have to unlearn. We definitely have to do that.
Takia, I wanted to add, it's funny you brought up the CNM. I literally just had a conversation a couple hours ago within my doula cohort, the sort of, CNM versus a, holistic midwife, because, just beneath the surface, there's still a lot of pushback between us doulas, midwives, and all that. And that was like a major point of contention with us. I also wanted to add is that my doula cohort and I are putting together a medical kit for Yale Hospital in Connecticut for cultural competency. And it surrounds not only the white, but other people of color, because they find themselves trying to please others. They're pushed up against the corner, trying to make sure that they're seen, and elevating themselves, but also forgetting why they're there in the first place. So it's an overall cultural competency, just like you're saying, unlearning and relearning what should be done with our patients, what should be done with the people who we're assigned to care for. I can't really speak to as far as nurses and doctors and how they treat the other patients of color. I just know what I've experienced myself as a doula in a hospital. Yes, there is some form of superiority complex, or they're trying to impress other nurses or other heads of nurses, or trying to, have their position known in the hospitals. And unfortunately, the patient suffers for that. But overall, I think it's, like you said, just relearning, who your patients are, who your people are. We were all there at one time in our lives. I'm sorry, my words are catching up to me, but just understand that their neighborhoods and their economical and social background that they're coming from, we've all been there at one time. We need to understand that also, and then meet them where they're at. You don't always have to talk above them, talk below them. Meet them where they are so they can understand what type of level of treatment that they're receiving. And I think that relationship will be so much better.
Thank you. The next question is for Katia. How different is it now with states opening back up? Are they allowing you in the delivery room with your client? If not, how do you make sure your client is okay or supported?
So I'm in New York, specifically in Queens, but I do service Long Island, Manhattan, and other boroughs. Right now, they're still really allowing one person. Usually the partner will go into delivery. Cesarean section is, that's still the same routine. But right now, like I said, virtual is a big thing, you know, and this is why I say that you have to get the entire family involved. It's a birth team, because the mother will be laboring. She cannot hold a phone face to face doing FaceTime with me. So the partner will be there, and we're talking through the contractions, and we're soothing, you know, through every contraction. Any questions she may have, I'm there, I'm supporting her. Prior to labor, we've always had a, you know, I still do in-home sessions as far as showing comfort measures and massaging and techniques. So I'll always bring that back up, and then just reminding the partner, this is what we're doing per contraction, and just reminding mom or birthing person what we've learned. And a lot of that is they have intuition, and a lot of supporting during labor is reminding them what they've learned and supporting them and affirming everything that they've learned before.
Thank you. Next question is from Lucine Cadet. Is there a link or network that we can choose or trust the physicians when a woman is pregnant? Has anyone thought about creating a page where physicians' locations and reviews are available so that an African-American woman can have more options when it's time to choose a doctor, midwife, or doula? So does that exist?
I know we do have a Black doula directory. I'm not sure if there's one for midwives.
So Sista, SISTA, midwife.com is a database that has national database of Black and Indigenous women or midwives and doulas. I know that some cities and states have a specific like doula organization or midwife organization. To my knowledge, there is not a database specifically for Black and Indigenous physicians. However, each hospital has its website for like hospital grades. You can look up information about cesarean section rates based on the hospital. You can also look up VBAC rates for the hospital, and you can vet that information on the hospital based on what you're looking for and statistics and, you know, preferable statistics that you have. So there are national platforms where you can vet the facility. And then other things like ZocDoc, Google, please do not pass those things by, because people who are pissed off and irate about a specific service will definitely drop a review, and those reviews should be looked at, and you should take those things in consideration when you're vetting a provider or a facility. So I would say definitely look at reviews online, and then you can check on those health grade websites and the ones about cesarean section and VBAC.
Thank you. Next question is from Celia McIntyre. Could Charles speak to aftercare/recovery services that may have helped him during this time to help cope?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. You know, that's one of the things that we're working on as a foundation, is making sure that while we're fighting and advocating to prevent mothers from dying, we're making sure that we're doing everything that we can to support families. And one of the things that myself and Bruce and Omari and some of our other brothers in this struggle talk about is there's really a void of resources specifically for fathers, right? There really is. And so that's one of the things that we're working to formalize. We kind of have our own informal group, but we're working on formalizing something specifically to support men. But as a foundation, what For Cure for Moms is doing is we're creating something called the Maternal Mortality Response Team. And so my vision is that within 72 hours, anywhere in the country, if a mother is lost, we will be able to mobilize a team to support that family, right? That support what does that support look like? It looks like practical things for the care of that child. I don't want that family to think about having to buy a diaper for a year, right? I don't want them to think about formula. I want to think about cribs and all those type of things. You know, child care support services, right? So what happens if this family is now, the mother is gone, and now this baby is the responsibility of a grandparent who's retired, right? Or a single father who has to make the decision now of caring for his child or going to work. right? So giving them the support they need to assist in the care of that child. It looks like make sure they have the emotional support, so make sure they have all the grief counseling services they need for not only for the family, the immediate family, the father, but the extended family, because this is a traumatic event that affects the entire community, right? And everybody doesn't have the type of community support that myself, that Shamony and Omari have and that Bruce has, right? We're very blessed, but a lot of people out here twisting, and we got to make sure that we support them. And last but not least, this looks like also making sure that there is an independent legal team that comes in to assess the situation, right? And does it quickly, because I could tell you story upon story about medical records being destroyed, people being coerced into signing away their rights. Literally in my situation, there were, we had multiple whistleblowers come forward, and, you know, people were pressured to leave. They would come back and threaten. They said, if you don't change your medical records, we're going to fire you. It's crazy. So make sure that there is an independent legal team that comes in to protect them. So that, you know, those are the things that we're working on as a foundation to support families. Excuse me. I want to mention one other thing too. I know that, you know, we talked about these different things, and Shamony was saying something that really sparked me, and I think that Katia was talking about something too. Another thing that we have to address, in addition to systemic racism, is we have to talk about the perverse incentives for industrialized healthcare, and particularly birthing, right? We have to talk about these perverse incentives, right? Bruce talked about this a little bit too, when we talked about the additional money and how it is about putting the profit over the people, right? And how when you talk about cesarean rates, with a cesarean, a hospital is able to charge 3 times as much and deliver the baby in a fraction of time, right? So that's why we see the cesarean rates going through the roof. But even when we talk about, this is one of the things that this is extremely troubling. So I was on a phone call last week with a group that was really working on trying to figure out how they could utilize tech to address the maternal mortality crisis. And I talked about, well, we need to approach it and position it in one way. And this would, you know, if we get the CFO at a hospital to do X and they bring this on. So this solution that we were talking about, not only will reduce maternal mortality rates, but would also have a huge impact on the infant mortality rate and the amount of babies that were spending time at the NICU. This is what I was told, and this blew my mind. Y'all know this. They talked about how CFOs, this program would cost $100 per baby, right, that we were talking about proposing. They were explaining to me that they were having difficulty getting hospital CFOs to buy and spend $100 per baby that would save lives of mothers and babies, because for each baby that's in the NICU, they're able to bill $35,000 a day. Right? So they're balancing their books off the fact the more babies that are in their NICU, it's a profit center, right? And that's why the reality of the situation, I'm going to say one thing that the reality of the situation is, we can talk about reform, but the reality of the situation is this medical system needs to be destroyed and rebuilt in a manner that puts profits secondary to people, first and foremost. There is no reform. We have to burn the thing to the ground, right? There is no, because at the end of the day, as long as they are able to get away with this, we will continue to see these rates go through the roof, and they don't care. They do not care. They are balancing their books off the backs of our suffering, period.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charles. Next question is Cassandra Philogene. Is there any way of having an attorney present when a woman faces mistreatment during labor to avoid further conflict? So is there?
No.
No, okay.
It's not going to be allowed. That's policy procedure. They don't even allow filming or video cameras or anything like that, because again, it's against policy and procedure, and that's a legal, you know, they're looking at it from a legal perspective. Medicine in the United States, specifically obstetric birth, is practiced from a medical legal like standpoint. They're not looking at birth because they're seeing that you're welcoming a new member into your family. They're looking at it, how can we not have a lawsuit here? And they're practicing that from that perspective. So there's no way they're going to let a lawyer that they know is a lawyer into that space. That person can come in there incognito and pose as a birth assistant or a doula or something of that nature, but certainly not. Now, can you verbalize, you know, once you're being mistreated and start throwing around the word attorney and things like that? If I would suggest that you do that when you're feeling like you're being mistreated or not listened to, because that will put them at attention in some situations, but you're not going to be able to have a legal person present and announce themselves as such.
Thank you. And Charles, go ahead. You just have to unmute yourself. Oh.
Thank you. So let me, and Takia, thank you for saying that. So here's the deal. Another thing that we have to talk about when we talk about this just BS that goes on, they won't allow lawyers, and they won't, and we're talking about one of the things with COVID and how they're limiting the number of support folks. They won't let doulas, they won't let midwives in there, but they'll let that for-profit hospital photographer come in there, right? Right? So this is unacceptable. Let me say this. Another thing, we're talking about what we're doing to make this better. We talked about the Omnibus, and thank you all for mentioning the Omnibus at the top of this. One of the bills within the Omnibus is the Keir Johnson Act. And the Keir Johnson Act does a couple of things. It provides funding and additional funding for community-based women of color-led organizations. They're going to provide doula care and midwifery because doulas matter, midwives matter. But one of the things I'm most proud about the Keir Johnson Act is it is going to provide funding to create, watch this now, we talk about accountability, Takia, is that it's going to provide grant funding to set up independent quality of care compliance offices within hospitals that are independent from hospitals.
Amen.
Okay, and then the federal government will then publish that data. So it's an important step that we will be able to have a place that is within hospitals where families can report these incidents, but it's not, because, you know, people come there like, well, let's call in the patient advocate. And at the end of the day, it's just somebody that's on the hospital's payroll, right? It's like, you know, I'm gonna put a note in the suggestion box, but the person who reads the note in the suggestion box is just a manager that gave you BS service, right? So we have an independent place where families can voice their concerns, and then hoping that by the federal government publishing the data in those reports, it'll be go a long way to holding accountability. It's not the fix, but it's an important first steps to giving people a place to voice their concerns and have advocates in the hospital that are independent from the hospital.
Thank you, Charles. Okay. Last question from Celia McIntosh. What strategy would you recommend to help maintain your unapologetic stance while being strategic in the system to change policies? If we do not take the right approach, not being at the table may also be detrimental to women of color. So that's our final question for the night. Anybody want to address that? Okay.
I can be one of the persons that addresses this. I laugh about this because I get into the room based on my experience. I get into the room based on my training and how long I've been in the field. And then when I get into the room, I share what I have to share. Not as intensely as I did today. Depends on, you know, what the subject matter is. But the biggest thing that I come with is the knowledge and understanding of the lens of racism and how it works. So because of how white supremacy works, I would be foolish not to come into the space and not know the data, right? Not know the material, because that's how this world works. That's how we've been all trained and developed, like come with the facts and the research. The study that I've done over the years that I've been in this work, like there's language that I use, and being able to point to situations that have demonstrated the lack of equity, the issues of institutional, structural, interpersonal racism. Sometimes the language that I use, like I don't come in the door like white supremacy, I share, like I said, there's this implicit bias conversation, there's EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion. Sometimes I have to come into the space through that lens or through that gateway, and then continue to unpack and take them deeper and deeper into a conversation about racism and how it works. So you definitely have to be strategic and allyship. Like part of what makes people of color so powerful is our collective consciousness. So if you're on a job, having folks who are aligned and believe what you believe, and all of you having a united front, and then also speaking from the same analysis. So if you don't believe a certain a definition about racism that your colleague, who's your partner, believes, it's problematic and it can be used to divide you. So you all need to be on the same page, speaking the same language, and have the same stance, and then also be armed with the same research and information, so that when you do enter these spaces, you're speaking credibly in the way that they think credibility is. And I want to make sure I'm being clear, the way that they think, the institution, the folks that are in charge. And there's a lot of intersecting issues. Sometimes you have to come from a particular issue that will get you in the doorway so that you can speak about how racism works. So yeah, I mean, definitely it's a strategy. Organizing is a strategy. Advocacy and activism need to be approached with integrity and with strategy. You can't just come in with emotion, but you also can't do this work absent of emotion. To me, once again, that's perpetuating white paradigms. Our emotions, our emotional intelligence and intuition and empathicness makes us a powerful people. And so cutting that out is only exacerbating the issues that we deal with right now, which is the lack of humanity that is presented when they're negotiating spaces with people around birthing and your body and your rights as a human being.
And before you do those things, please don't think that just by feeling the frustration or anger or it having happened to you or knowing someone that it touched, don't think that that's just enough, right? That piece is all you need to start making change. Oh, it's much deeper than that. You have to do a unlifting, an unearthing of this stuff that's been embedded in you, that was embedded in me. And this is not something that has happened for me. I've evolved as a midwife over the years. I've been a midwife for 17 years and I've evolved. I'm not who I was when I first started this thing. So you have to remember that this is a process. Not only are you going out and being strategic about the work on the level of the institutions, but you have to be strategic about that thing that's sitting in here. Start asking yourself the hard questions. Am I practicing unbiased? Because don't get this wrong. You could still go and get provided care by somebody look like this and still come out with the same outcome. Please don't get that twisted, because it's not about the color of skin when it comes down to some of these systems that we have to unearth. We are indoctrinated healthcare providers, unfortunately, because we've been educated in this system. So you have to definitely do some reflection and reflecting of who you are, how you're providing care, what you're saying, how, and above all, let love be what is the catalyst for the care that you're providing. Every person that comes across your care should feel like they're being cared for by their auntie, their cousin, their sister, their friend, their mother, whoever it is. They should feel that soul to soul connection with you, that when they came into your space, they feel better having left it. If you're not doing that kind of care, then it's subpar.
Thank you. Any final comments from our speaker panel?
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you. This has been just a blessing to be here with y'all today. And I think just kind of adding on to what Kia said, the real is, y'all, like, I mean, I have Black people tell me that I'm talking about Black stuff too much, right? You get what I'm saying? Like, they'll be like, oh, Charles, you know, I mean, the way you say it, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? And my thing is like, you know, when we talk about this, a couple of things I want you to do is when you I want you to center yourself in. Two things I just want to leave you with in closing. Like, we talk about these statistics, people, when you bring up the racial issue and you stand in your Blackness, people will try and say that you're making these things a racial issue. The reality of the situation, we didn't make it a racial issue, the statistics did, firstly. The reality of this other thing about this is I want you to understand is that I know that this work is difficult. I know that sometimes it may be thankless. I know that it may seem like it is insurmountable to slay all of these dragons that we are facing. But the reality is this, y'all, is that it's because of the work that you all are doing. It is because of the fact that you are pouring your souls into this work that, and this is one of the things that I, even became more affirmed in when I spent time with Omari and Shamony, and we spend time in their faith and we talk about the presence of our ancestors. The reality is this work is so beautiful because not only is it serving as and honoring our ancestors, but it is securing our future, right? This work that we are doing here and now, and us taking a stand and making it clear that we are not going to accept this and that enough is enough, this work will live on for generations far after we're gone, right? It's because of this work that mothers will be at the first day of kindergarten, right? That will get to be at graduations and dance at weddings, right? Because of what we did now. And this is going to lay a foundation, you know what I'm saying? Because these precious gifts, these precious mothers, they cannot be replaced. And because we are sending them home to raise their precious babies, there is no other more noble calling. And so I'm grateful to you all for utilizing your gifts and pouring into the world in this manner. And so on behalf of myself, on behalf of families all over this country that are suffering at the hands of this crisis, I just want to thank y'all.
Thank you. And Shamony, are you going to close? You have one more comment?
No, I just wanted to, just in case something came up, I definitely want to thank people for being present, like all this time spent going beyond the time that was declared to be in a conversation like this one and to negotiate the pain that comes up and out of us as we talk about this. And just inviting everyone in the space to take care of themselves beyond this meeting, because sometimes the energy that is shared doesn't hit you until later. And just being a clinician, it's like we need to take a breath, drink some water, and just sit still somewhere. Just don't take this information and just go on and do the next thing, because we're talking about loss and trauma, and you matter and the stories matter, and it's just necessary to administer self-care because the road ahead is going to be a challenging road to navigate.
I thank you all to the speakers who have dedicated their time tonight and to speak about their stories, their truth, and their work. And I want to thank everybody who has attended this event this afternoon, as well as everybody who registered in general. There are some questions about the recording and also about contact for the different speakers. There will be a recap email that will be sent out from Eventbrite with the link to the recording, as well as links to the different organizations for everybody who spoke today, as well as ways that you can also donate to our nonprofit organizations. So we have all learned a lot tonight. I hope that you take this information and disseminate it in your circles, as well as continue the action, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And please stay woke. Please do not get comfortable. Because this can happen again to any of us or ourselves. So with that said, lastly, I want to thank my committee, my Health and Social Policy Committee. We've been working on this for the past month or so, and it's been really phenomenal to put this town hall together. And so this is the first of many other activities that we will be doing, and that I will also be doing in my role as president of this chapter, as second vice president of my other organization, and as a professor and a clinician. Thank you all, and have a safe night.
Thank you.